Example 3 for simplifying expressions with rational exponents. Here in this example, I have a term being multiplied by another term. Notice there's no plus or minus signs in either of these parentheses, so I can just remove these parentheses and multiply these quantities together. But before we do that, I have an exponent here in this parentheses, so I'm going to distribute this -2 into each one of the variables. And this is another exponent law that I'm going to explain to you off to the side here. Over here to the side, we have that whenever you have x to the third power, for example, raised to the sixth power, what we do is this is equal to x to the third power times 6, which is x to the 18th power. And that same exact thing is what's going to happen here. When I take this -2 and I distribute it here, I'm going to multiply the powers. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite this one since there's nothing to be done with this first parentheses for now. I'm going to rewrite it just as it is, and then here I'm going to distribute this -2 with the x. So x has an exponent of 1 right now, so this becomes 1 times -2, which is x to the -2 power. And then I multiply that power by 7/4, and that becomes y. Off to the side here, I'm going to do 7/4 times -2. And remember, when we multiply fractions, we multiply numerator times numerator, which is -14. And denominator times denominator, there's a denominator of 1 here, which is 4. You can also, before you multiply numerator times numerator, you can also cancel out common factors. Okay, so I would cancel out the 2 with the 4, and I would get a -1 here and a 2 here. But since I didn't, I got -14/4, I can reduce this. I can reduce this by using a common factor of 2. If I divide the numerator by 2, I get -7, and if I divide the denominator by 2, I get 2, -7/2. The other way I was saying, I didn't want to write over what I had already written and make a mess, is you can cancel this because they have a common factor of 2, and this becomes -1, this becomes 2. And then 7 times -1, numerator times numerator, gives you -7, and 2 times 1 gives you 2. You get the same thing, either way, okay? So that means that this is y to the -7/2 power. Okay? And now that I'm done distributing this exponent, I can remove these parentheses because this is all being multiplied, and this is how it looks. I can write x to the 5/2 power, y to the 4th power, x to the -2 power, y to the -7/2 power. You see, they're all being multiplied. Now I'm going to rearrange. I'm going to rearrange these terms and put the x's next to the x's and the y's next to the y's. And I can do this because there's a property that's called the commutative property. The commutative property says that it's the same thing to have x times y or y times x. In other words, it's the same thing to have 3 times 2 or 2 times 3. So that property lets me rearrange these terms. Okay, so I'm going to have the x's together and the y's together. X to the 5/2 times x to the -2 times y to the 4th times y to the -7/2. Now we use the other exponent laws that says if we're multiplying the same base, we add the exponents. So that becomes x to the 5/2 plus or minus 2, or plus -2. Right? We add the exponents. And this becomes y times y to the 4th plus negative 7/2 powers. So I joined my x's together, my y's together, and since I'm multiplying them, I can add the exponents. Now careful here, if I'm going to add 5/2 plus negative 2, you have to find a common denominator. Let's do that here off to the side. I have 5/2 plus negative 2. My common denominator here is 2. 5/2 already has the denominator of 2. I need this to have a denominator of 2. Right now, the denominator for this one is 1. So to make the denominator 2, I would have to multiply the numerator and denominator by 2. And this becomes 5/2 plus negative 4/2. And now I can add them. And this is 1/2. So I have x to the 1/2 power. Now let's do y. For y, I have 4 plus negative 7/2, right? This is 7/2. So I need a common denominator. The common denominator is 2. This one already has the common denominator. This one has a denominator of 1. To change this denominator into a 2, I would have to multiply the numerator and denominator by 2. So this becomes 8 over 2 plus negative 7 over 2, and that equals 1/2. So this becomes y to the 1/2 power. And you're done. X to the 1/2, y to the 1/2. This is your final answer. Notice how much we use fractions with rational exponents, and it's expected, right? Because the exponents are fractions. I hope you understood this example, and I'm going to do one more example on simplifying expressions with rational exponents. I'll see you in the next video.